It's 2025 and COVID is still causing divorces. Just in the last month, I've talked to, I think, 4 different men who are going through a separation or divorce really because of COVID, or to put it more specifically, because of their wife's fear around COVID. And it's always one of two situations. I think I actually had 2 and 2 this month. Either she's afraid of the virus and she's afraid of letting the kids go back to public school. She's still masking. She's afraid of events. She's got a lot of fear around staying safe. Or she has a lot of fear about what the government is doing and a lot of fear about how we might be being controlled, different conspiracies or fears about what might happen next. And in either case, it really doesn't matter which direction it's coming from. It's her fear that is starting to break the family apart. And in these cases, when I talk to these men, their frustration, and very rightly so, is often that they're being reasonable, right? Like they're being rational, they're being logical, they're trying to support her as much as possible. They're trying to support her in her fear and help her through this. But they're the ones trying to make calm, rational, reasonable decisions for their kids, for the family, for the future. And when I talk to these men, often what they'll tell me is, first they'll give me examples of how extreme her behavior is, right? One side or the other. But how fear-based and how extreme her reactions are, and how unwilling she is or unable she is to hear reason. And anytime that he tries to speak reasonably to her, he gets accused of trying to control her, of not supporting her, or of actually putting their family and their children at risk. And what's especially difficult for these men is they're not being unreasonable, and they've actually checked into this. Like, these guys, they're amazing, right? It's been years now that this has been going on. Right? She changed during COVID, and she hasn't been the same since. But he's really not been sure, like, is she right? Is she wrong? Like, am I the one who's being unreasonable? And I've been so impressed with these guys because one after the other, they tell me about the things that they've done to kind of double check themselves. They're like, look, I've been going to therapy. I've been talking to a therapist to see, like, am I the one who's being unreasonable? You know, I've done, this and that research. I've talked to friends and family. And like, they're really trying to get a variety of opinions on their own perspective to see, like, am I the crazy one? Am I the one who's wrong in this situation? And one of them said something to me the other day that inspired me to make this video. He said, Rachael, I've been working with this therapist, and we looked at it and we realized that, like, my defensiveness, my reactivity is normal. Like, I'm not any more defensive or reactive than the normal person, right? She is just hyper defensive and hyper reactive. But there's a sense of injustice there, right? Because here you are being a good husband, a good father, and you have, like, you're not this emotionally stunted or overly controlling person, right? You're behaving normally. And if this is the situation you're in, this is so important for you to hear, but it's going to be hard. It's not enough for you to be at a normal level of reactivity in this situation. Fairness and justice is not going to come into play for you here, unfortunately. You are dealing with a person, your wife, who is she's not only in fight or flight, she's in chronic fight or flight. She's been afraid for 5 years. Right? She has been living with an activated nervous system. Her nervous system in this disruptive state. She's had stress hormones flooding her system for 5 years. Right? She is in a chronic fight or flight response. And that means that she is going to be hyper reactive. She is going to be quick to be aggressive. She's going to be quick to fight back. She's going to be quick to shut down. She is going to have a very hard time. It may be actually impossible for her to access the full capacity of her reasoning, logical brain because she is stuck in this chronic fight or flight response. So what does that mean for you? What does that mean for your kids? Well, it means that you need to focus on the outcomes that you want to create. And now at this stage, you're going to probably be in one of two places. Either you're still hoping that there's a chance that she's going to come to her senses and become the woman that you married again. Or you're realizing that she's right and it really is over and it's time to move towards a divorce. But if you're moving towards a divorce, you're realizing, like, I have to co-parent with this person. she's not being reasonable, right? I have to negotiate the divorce settlement. We have to split up our assets. Like, we have to go through all of that with this person who's being very unreasonable and acting based out of fear. And a lot of men get stuck here in the, like, this isn't right? Like, it's not fair that I have to be the one who goes like the extra mile to, work harder. Like, when I'm the one who's being reasonable and she's the one who's being kind of absurd in how fearful she is. You have to get this idea of fairness and justice out of your head. Because if you stay stuck on what she needs to do, you are not going to get the outcome that you want. Whether that is reconciling with her and having her be reasonable, or going through this divorce in a way that does the least amount of damage to your bank account and your children. So in this kind of situation, you have to become an emotional regulation ninja. You can't be a normal level of human defensiveness and responsiveness. She is at such a heightened state. If you're at normal and you interact, let me back up a second. Human nervous systems co-regulate. So when we're around people who are calm and grounded, it's easier for us to feel calm and grounded. When we're around somebody who's really activated, we tend to feel more activated. And the state that somebody's in is prone, our emotional states have a lot of inertia. Like, it's easier to stay in the emotional state you're in right now than to change it. And so if you're at like normal, reactiveness, and she's at like hyper reactiveness, and you two try to have a conversation, there's really only room for you to move up, right? You're likely to get more triggered by her because she's so reactive. She's definitely going to get more triggered by you because she's so reactive. And we're going to spiral upwards. So if you want to bring that dynamic down, which is what you want, because when she's in that fight or flight and when it's more activated, she becomes less reasonable. There is a direct correlation between the degree of fight or flight, the degree of fear that somebody's living in, and their ability to access their rational, logical, reasonable parts of their brain. Those parts of the brain go offline the more afraid we are. So if she's been activated for 5 years, you're not going to get her down to like a calm, grounded nervous system state. But there's still degrees of how activated she is in the moment. The calmer she is in the moment, the more reasonable she's going to be able to be, the more logical she's going to be able to be, and the easier it's going to be to negotiate with her, to have co-parenting conversations, and to make decisions with her. If there is a chance to reconcile, it can only happen when she gets out of that chronic fight or flight. You can't do that for her. I want to be very, very clear about this. You cannot do that for her. You can help a little bit. You can create an environment where it is more possible for her. You do that by getting into that emotional regulation ninja zone. If you are super calm, super grounded, really steady, non-reactive, and you can stay there consistently, sometimes, right, we've got that balance. She's up here, you were here, now you're like way down here. It'll shift that dynamic. If she's ready to drop out of that chronic fight or flight, you can create an environment that invites her to do that. She might do it, she might not. You cannot control that. You will at least know, right? If you can get into that state, stay there for a few weeks, you'll either start to see some changes in her or you won't. You cannot absolutely determine it either way, but you will go forward into divorce knowing that you did everything in your capability. You did everything that was possible for you to do. And that can bring a lot of peace of mind, because divorce is not easy, right? And divorcing from somebody who's so highly activated that they're going to be a really high conflict spouse in the divorce process isn't easy either. So going into it with that peace of mind, knowing I gave this every chance I could, can be really, really healing. All right, if you are facing separation or divorce and your soon-to-be ex-wife still is carrying a lot of fear from COVID and she's in that chronic fight or flight response, you need to focus on two things. One is, what do you actually want? What are your objectives? What are the outcomes that you are trying to achieve? And when I say get clear on this, I mean like write it down, really define it. What do I want? What are the outcomes that I want for myself? What are the outcomes that I want for my children? I'm going to encourage you not to worry so much about the outcomes you want for your soon-to-be ex-wife, because you have very little control over those. And the hard thing now, divorces that are originating in COVID, that are happening now in 2025, the hardest thing about them is that all this time now, you and she have been in this dynamic together, and it's quite likely that you have really become like part of the problem in her mind, part of the trigger. And in that case, like, you have even less power to help her shift out of this state. We can hope that she's going to shift out of it, but it's quite likely that you are not the person who's going to be able to support her in doing that. So I'm going to invite you to really focus. What are the outcomes you want for yourself? What are the outcomes you want for your children? And then your job is to get laser focused on those and take action towards them. And what you're going to notice is that your emotional self is going to want to take actions that actually lead you away from the outcomes you want. And that's because the emotional self is there to support your sense of self and well-being, not just the external outcomes that you want. So let me give you an example. If one of the outcomes that you want is for the kids to go back to public school, I've met a lot of men like you. You're doing all of the right things. You're in therapy, you're going to support groups or divorce care, you're watching Eckhart Tolle and Mel Robbins on YouTube, and you're reading all of the personal development books. But you're still waking up at 3 a.m. with your heart racing and thoughts of your ex-wife in your mind that won't stop. You are working too hard at this to still be going into a cold sweat at every kid drop-off. Comment the word change on this video and I will send you a free divorce recovery training that will change your life. And she does not want that. And there's been a lot of argument around that. This is the outcome you want. She's got a say in it. You have a say in it. We have to come to an agreement on it. You need her to be in her lowest activation state when you have that conversation. If she's activated more, we know she's always activated because she's in this chronic fight or flight, but we want to bring her into like the least activated degree of her fight or flight response, because that's where she's going to be most likely to be able to access a more logical, reasonable part of her brain. And in that state, you are going to have a better chance of getting that conversation done and having a better outcome in terms of that conversation with her. So your goal then, when you talk to her, is not to trigger her, not to activate her, to help her stay in a calmer, more grounded state. You're not going to want to do that because she's going to come into that conversation and she's going to be like, no, absolutely not. Kids are not going back to public school. She's going to come in and say something where she's just like not willing to negotiate. If you want the outcome, you've got to help her regulate, right? And like I said, you can't bring her out of this all the way. All you can do is create an environment that invites her in the moment to be a little less triggered. What you're going to want to do is fight back. That normal, natural human defensiveness is going to come up. You're going to want to argue with her and fight with her. If you do that, we're just escalating the conflict. You're not going to get the outcome that you want, right? And this is where that emotional regulation ninja skills has to come in. You have to be able to stay calm and grounded, even when she's at her most activated. Because the more consistently you can do that, the more likely you are to de-escalate the conversation to achieve the outcome that you want. And so you've got to stay laser focused. What are the outcomes I want? What are the actions that are in my power to take to help achieve those outcomes? If your emotions are jumping up and getting in the way, trying to defend you, and your emotions aren't wrong, you guys, like, it is unfair. It isn't right that you have to be the one who has to work so hard. But if you want these outcomes, that's what's going to happen, right? So we need to deal with these emotions effectively. We need to honor what they're trying to do for you, which is remind you that you're a good person and a good husband and a good father and that you deserve to be treated better than this. They're also there to fight for your children and make sure your kids get what they need. And so these emotions are not bad. But it's quite possible that they're going to get in the way and actually take you further away from the outcomes that you want instead of closer to them. So in this next video, the emotional survival guide, it's a divorce emotional survival guide for men. I'm going to walk you through 9 different primary emotions that men experience during divorce. And I give you specific tools for each one. So if you're getting triggered into anger, if you're in fear, if you're in grief, if you're in denial, any of the 9 emotional stages that I commonly see my clients going through during their divorces, they're all in this divorce survival guide. It's really comprehensive and it gives you tools that you can use with every single emotion to bring yourself into that calm, grounded state so that you can take the actions that you need to take in order to get the outcomes that you need for yourself and your children. So come with me into this next video, the divorce survival guide for men, and I'll show you how we do that.